Welcome everyone to a special presentation on the television game show resurgence of the early 80s. However, before I get going, let me just acknowledge that this video was suggested by channel member John Collins. Thank you, John, for your support and this wonderful suggestion. Okay, let's get going. Let's take a look back at this special era and explore some of the most iconic game shows of all time. All of the game shows that I'm going to talk about today are beloved because they are fun, interactive, and give people a chance to win big prizes. We can all imagine ourselves up there on stage playing for that brand new car or that dream vacation. So what exactly was it about these game shows that made them so darn popular during the early 80s? Well, for one thing, they were a great escape from the real world. Something that we could use a little more of these days, I think. People could tune in and forget about their problems for just a little while. And that was a valuable commodity, my friend. I'm going to talk about 4 game shows that in my mind stood out from all of the rest. And if you don't mind, I think I'll start with The Price is Right, which premiered in 1972, but really hit its stride in the early 80s. The show was a hit because it combined games of chance and skill with absolutely fantastic prizes, and it had an energetic host in Bob Barker. Everyone wanted to come on down and be part of the fun. Whenever I think about Bob Barker, I think about the amazing work that he has done over the years as someone who truly cares about animals. Not just cute dogs and cats, but all sorts of animals, even elephants. Which brings me to something that makes me super sad. The fact that Bob and fellow animal activist Betty White disliked each other so darn much. Apparently, the reason for their mutual disdain actually was an elephant. The two of them had got into a heated debate over Billy, an elephant at the Los Angeles Zoo who had overgrown his enclosure. Bob fought to relocate the elephant to a sanctuary in San Andreas. Betty, however, fought to keep the animal at the zoo in a bigger enclosure. Her side won the debate, and from that time on, Bob labeled Betty White his sworn enemy. But let's get back to something a ton more fun to talk about. One of the most memorable aspects of The Price is Right was the iconic group of models known as Barker's Beauties. These beautiful women would showcase the prizes and interact with contestants, adding an extra level of excitement to the show. The most famous of these models was undoubtedly Diane Parkinson, who worked on the show from 1975 to 1993. But other notable Barker's Beauties included Janice Pennington, Holly Hallstrom, and Anitra Ford. They became beloved stars in their own right, and their presence on the show helped make The Price is Right one of the most iconic game shows of all time. But The Price is Right was just the beginning. Let's move on to Family Feud, which premiered in 1976, but became a true pop culture phenomenon in the early 80s. As the title implies, Family Feud was all about families competing against each other to guess the most popular survey answers of the day. It was a great mix of strategy, luck, and family dynamics, and the host, Richard Dawson, well, he added his own unique charm to the show. Some of my favorite episodes were when casts of different television shows would compete against each other. Just one example of how wonderful this could be was in 1983 when the cast of Batman took on the cast of Gilligan's Island. And if you're thinking that Adam West and his crew were the victors, well, you would be wrong. Let me just say that Don Wells was a truly fierce competitor. Who knew that Mary Ann had it in her? Another great game show from the early 80s is Wheel of Fortune. Like the other shows that we've talked about, this one debuted in the 70s as well. Wheel of Fortune was a game show like no other. It combined elements of hangman and roulette, with contestants spinning a giant wheel to determine the amount of money that they could win. Then they had to solve a puzzle by guessing letters and filling in blanks. The show made stars out of the host, Pat Sajak, as well as his lovely letter-turning assistant, Vanna White. And of course, we could not talk about the television game show resurgence of the early 80s without a mention of Jeopardy! This show is even older than the other shows, having premiered way back in 1964, but just like all of the others, it wasn't until the early 80s when it really became a pop culture sensation. Jeopardy! Was a game show that was all about knowledge. Contestants had to answer questions in the form of answers, and the categories ranged from history and literature to science and Well, guess what? Pop culture. Adding to the prestige of the show was its host, the late, great Alex Trebek. Alex hosted Jeopardy for over 35 years, and his calm and authoritative presence made him a beloved figure in homes all across America. Like all of the shows that I've talked about in this video, Jeopardy is still on the air today, and while Alex is no longer with us, his legacy lives on. The show continues to be a beacon of intelligence and competition, and it remains one of the most popular game shows of all time. These shows, along with many others like Hollywood Squares, Match Game, and Press Your Luck, captured the hearts and minds of viewers across America. They were entertaining, engaging, and they gave us a chance to test our skills and knowledge against others. Can you guess who this is? Alright, enough. Without a doubt, the TV game show resurgence of the early 80s was a special time that brought families together and gave us all something to cheer about. And that's why these shows continue to have a special place in our hearts today. Okay, now it's your turn. What was your favorite TV game show? And did you figure out who that is right there? Let me know in the comments section. And while you're at it, if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. Maybe even consider subscribing to the channel. I talk about music, movies, and mostly TV from decades gone by. You know, the good stuff. But most importantly, and as always, thank you so much for watching.